Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. We have another episode of Ken's Corner. Ken, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. How are you, Jay? And we have a guest.
We have a special guest that has come to help us fight the news of the day, the current events, and the hopelessness and apathy of the world. We have the absolute fabulous Sandy Simpson.
Wow, what an intro. Thanks for having me here, guys. I appreciate it.
In case you're wondering, Ken and Sandy have been practicing the Gyuka Haito reverse ridge hand strike that they're going to take out against the forces of darkness.
Hiya.
There we go.
Hiya.
There's a hiya.
Perfect. Yes, right. Yes. So we're gonna start off with the YouTube.
Yes.
So I just wanted to say again, if you like and you comment, YouTube will push this out to more people. And I just have the comment of the week is I think I mentioned her last week. We didn't have a whole bunch of comments this week, but Eileen Bryson said, "Thank you, Jay and Ken. Love listening to you guys. Very informative update, Maranatha." So, but I also have my shirt that I wore, and it says self-sponsored. And I actually got this shirt in Hawaii, which will be our first story. I got it in Maui. I got it at one of the shops there that's no longer there. Anyway, yep.
I wanted to mention our comment on Rumble that we got. It is from Baby Dino75. The James and Kenny show or the Kenny and James show? Abbott and Costello, who's on first? Love both of your senses of wry humor. Even notice how we, a true born-again believers, have senses of humor in these terrible days and getting worse as Scripture predicts. Why our Savior is coming for us and soon. Amen, brothers and sisters in Christ. I just would like to say to that, you know, as believers, we have a hope, we have a joy, even as the world surrounding us is just descending into complete chaos and debauchery. We can laugh because we know the outcome. We know that Christ is going to win. If I could, I'd just like to share a scripture with you. It's John 16:33. This is Jesus talking to his disciples. I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. And that is why we can have a sense of humor. Jesus overcame it for us.
Amen. Amen. Yes.
Not a subject necessarily to be joking about, because obviously this is a tragedy. Ken, let's talk a little bit about Maui.
Okay. And I kind of qualify as someone who knows people there. I actually had a client there that I didn't tell you this in the pre-show, that I actually got a phone call from. He drove to an area where he could call me, and I talked him around the opposite side of the island to get out from Kaanapali, Napili area. So, but I used to live in Hawaii. I lived there for 17 years, first 17 years of my life. But I was going to talk about, the disaster and focus on what I think was going on and stuff. But the Lord laid on my heart how just, kind of why are so many apocalyptic natural disasters suddenly happening all over the globe? Because we're seeing these, weekly, daily, like endless, unprecedented fires, floods, earthquakes, storms, and droughts. Right. But I will say this about the fire. The fire was not normal. Something was weird about the fire. But like I said, I was raised in Hawaii, and I had 7 years on the Big Island, 10 years on Maui. But I went back 20 years after, with my wife and to the Kaanapali Lahaina area. I know that area like the back of my hand. This shirt is from that area, and it's the place is burned down. But as one of the helicopter pilots said as he flew over the area, I was not prepared for what I saw. I've been flying 52 years on Maui, and I've never seen anything like it. This could be the worst disaster that in Hawaii. But let's look at the world. I'm trying to focus on what's happening worldwide. And another headline: raging Portugal fires force hundreds of tourists to flee apocalyptic inferno. So that's in Portugal. Spain had fires. We're seeing lots of unprecedented storms. A cataclysmic hailstorm in Germany. It looked like the winter right in the middle of summer. Elsewhere in Europe, a month of rain fell in Slovenia in a single day. Horrendous floods ensued. It's like the worst natural disaster in Slovenia will probably be. On the other side of the planet in China, right? In Beijing, the floods, and there's so many dead. and the crops throughout that region were completely wiped out. But meanwhile, and then also the sun. I wanted to look at the sun because it reminds me of a lot of people talking about how hot it was in Phoenix. 21 days, it was 115 plus. But it reminds me of the sun is mentioned in Revelation 7:16. They will hunger no longer, nor thirst anymore, nor will the sun beat down on them, nor any heat. So that's talking. I see you nodding your head, Sandy. That's awesome. But I'm convinced that we're just not prepared for what's coming. Most of us aren't prepared, and that haven't talked about end times or last days or anything. But I believe the sun will be a major role. We'll be out of here when it goes to a third. But I believe we're going to see some things that happen during these times that are approaching that people would consider impossible. But so anyway, lastly. The fire updates, I think 80 people now have been confirmed, past dead. Officials are scrambling to find housing for 4,000 people. 30 cell towers are down, so they still got power outages and cell outages. And I was reading about the famous artist Bill Whalen. You guys remember him, Bill Whalen?
Yes.
Remember the whales and stuff? And he had to flee his shop. He lived on Oahu, but he was on Maui. He was at his shop on Maui. I've been there so many times. And he had to flee on his Harley. The back of his neck was getting singed he watched people jump from their cars because he was riding on the sidewalk on his Harley, and people were jumping out of their cars into the ocean as it was coming down. That's how fast.
I heard that.
Unbelievable. Anyway, that's my little.
I heard that people were, out in the ocean trying to escape the fire.
Yeah, and they don't know if they're still pulling up. They have I think I don't know if I sent you the screenshot, Jay, or not. I don't think so, but I think they had 1,500 they're still looking for. I think something like that, 1,000 or 1,500 that are still missing. But 4,000. I mean, it's crazy how fast, how big it was. I don't want to get into I was going to talk about the DEW weapons that they have, the direct energy weapons and stuff, but it just was so fast. But it reminded me of the Paradise Fire in California that happened, how fast they say just melted steel and other things. And also it reminded me of the Grease fires that happened, a year and a half ago, I think, or so, where it just overwhelmed an area so fast. So anyway,
these fires, modern fires, are just getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
Sandy,
I think
I just wanted to ask, you lived in Hawaii quite a long time. Obviously, Maui is not Oahu, but the sense of community that the islands have is something very unique. And
yes.
I'm just wondering, in your opinion, having lived in Hawaii for the length of time you have, do you see the community like on Oahu, on the Big Island, on Kauai, and just do you see them coming to volunteer to help?
I don't know. I hope so.
Yes.
I can only hope so. I would think so. I mean, they need help really bad, and it's a tough thing because at one time, before the government got involved, there was a guy out there who wanted to run a ferry service between the islands, and that would have come in very handy for fire trucks, to bring him over there. So, but they disallowed him, and he got frustrated and left. Took his boats with him. It was really bad mismanagement, but a lot of stuff in Hawaii is that way. It's very badly mismanaged by the government.
Yes.
So, but yes, I can guarantee you that a lot of people are very concerned, and the Christians are praying for people over there, et cetera, but hopefully they're getting help,
So I was watching this one girl who's a fighter, and she started on a GoFundMe, and she thought she'd get about 1,000, 5,000 maybe if she could. Last I checked, she was at almost 2 million.
Wow.
Praise God.
2 million. She was like freaking out. She was like freaking out. She was like, wow, I can't believe it. I just don't know what to say to everybody. I don't know. Well, so yeah.
There are a lot of people.
Yeah. So coming together. Yeah. So yeah, to help your fellow man.
Well, they're going to need all the money they can get because it just destroyed everything in Lahaina. So
yeah, demolished.
Rebuilding from scratch. In fact, I would assume that there's going to be maybe some vast development of the devastated land, that it's no longer to be the quaint little historic fishing town anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
I think it might be some resorts and high rises coming up after this.
Yeah. And it's sad because you know the 150-year-old banyan tree, the museum, all that area downtown. I mean, it was awesome. It was a really nice area. It was classic. But
All right. Our next topic is an interesting topic, to say the least. It's something I posted on Memorial TV's YouTube page. We're just going to quickly go over it, since there is a lot of talk about extraterrestrials with the government. I just brought this up to you, gentlemen. This is a picture of Aleister Crowley, obviously, the father of modern Satanism. And he has quote below, "Today they call them angels and demons. Tomorrow they will call them something else." And on the left, we have a picture of his illustration of Lamb, which is the channeled spirit. And we have a picture of a gray alien in North Carolina from an abduction case sketch. Gentlemen, can you talk a little bit about that connection that I think we as Christians, as we look at through the spiritual world, there seems to be a lot of similarities between demonic oppression and extraterrestrial activity. In fact, Sandy, could you share that story you shared with us about?
Yeah, I can do that. But first of all, it's a misnomer to call these demons extraterrestrial. They're intraterrestrial. They're here. Okay, these guys. That's the problem. For years they've been talking about aliens coming here, and they're still. I mean, I was watching a program the other day. We all came from Mars, and they're the ones who seeded the planet, and all this. It's just absolute gobbledygook. People just making up stuff. But these types of alien creatures, I mean, kind of reminds me of the Asgard, I think, on Stargate SG-1. Those kind of creatures have been seen a lot by a number of people. And we had a guy that lived in our village when I lived in Palau, and he came back from Vietnam, and he was absolutely out of his mind. He was definitely possessed. And my mother talked with him, and he was telling her that he had these 3 little green men torturing him, basically. And the description was exactly what you just saw in that picture. That's what it was. So, it's they're not aliens. They are demons, and demons can appear in a number of different ways. I mean, we know that Satan can appear as an angel of light, and in fact, I did a series on the Marian apparitions and how I believe that is actually Satan or a very high angel. Demonic angel, because she keeps saying, "I am the morning star." And to me, that's a clue.
Yes.
Because we know who the morning star is. It's not Jesus, it's Satan. Yeah. Now, Jesus, of course, supersedes. In the end, he is the bright and morning star, but I think the enemy, I think God requires Satan to expose himself every once in a while so people with discernment can actually tell what's going on. But these things, they're absolutely demonic. No doubt about it.
And it's interdimensional. It would be more apt. Yeah.
Yes, they're paranormal. They're in the supernatural dimension or whatever. And but people need to be very careful of this stuff. Don't mess around with it. I mean, they can, demons can possess people, if they don't belong to the Lord, so it's dangerous stuff.
And oppressed Christians.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sandy. That was a very interesting take. Thank you for the story. We're going to talk a little bit about another pie in the sky scheme. California. We talked last week about the lab that was uncovered, but I believe we found some connections that we'd like to talk about. Ken, talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm going to go off on Newsom. Remember I told you, do you think Gavin Newsom knows about this? And you're like, yeah, I think so. But it turns out that he must have funded these Chinese COVID labs. And I guess everyone was surprised except for us, right? But anyway, also the now notorious secret facility, which contained a massive stockpile of infectious agents, including coronavirus, and nearly 1,000 dead lab mice and vials of unidentified biological fluids, also likely came as no surprise to the Biden administration. If you remember, Fresno, California officials discovered the unlicensed laboratory last week, and it was owned by Prestige Biotech. I mean, I reported on it last week. They didn't find it last week. They found it earlier in the year. In fact, the founder of law firm representing Prestige Biotech, Michael M. Lynn, is reported a regular sponsor of CCP. So your Prestige Biotech took over the lab from Universal MedTech, who went bankrupt following a series of fires. Now, Universal MedTech has direct, strong, connections with CCP ties. They receive nearly $400,000 from Newsom's Office of Business and Development. So this company is not licensed in California, I think I said last week, and yet they received almost $400,000 from the office of Gavin Newsom. On a sidebar, the story broke months ago. The lab was being investigated for months, but no one knew exactly what it was or what it contained. And it made news locally, but didn't seem to matter nationally. But once the extent of the matter, what it contained was discovered, it started making more ripples. But just stay tuned for that and see what's up with that.
What did it contain? Did they figure that out?
Yeah, it contained like 20 different viruses. It had mice. It had mice that they had injected with coronavirus, and they ended up getting rid of them. But it's crazy how it got accidentally discovered by a guy who saw a garden hose going into it. And he was like, he was an inspector. He was inspecting another property, and he looked around and he saw that going in there, and he just goes, "What the heck?" And and then it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. The story. I'm sure they're hiding a lot of stuff, but but allowing a Chinese company to practice gain of function research on our shores, it's like inviting biological warfare into our backyard. Yeah,
I mean, this has been their biggest cash cow.
Yeah.
And so they are, you just know they're going to try to do the same kind of thing that they did before. It worked.
Yeah.
And it's bringing us closer to global governance. That's what they want. They want to make everybody get together, and we all, like sheep, go home and stay in our houses and wear masks and, comply with whatever they want. And meanwhile, we also buy their drugs, and so it's fear-based. It's all fear-based. It's a ploy,
Yeah, it is. It's crazy.
Ken, one of the things I've considered is, how would you introduce that to California specifically? And right there, and not too far, is the California Aqueduct. And if you add biologics into that, it would be an instant game over from the north of California to the south of California.
And that's what they talked about over and over again is infecting the water and any of the passageways that the water goes through. Yeah, they've talked about that. And so Wow. Yeah.
One of these guys are not wise enough to handle that kind of stuff and be tinkering around with genetic material. They're going to end up doing something like that, whether on purpose or an accident, and cause a major plague is what's going to end up happening.
And that's what I'm thinking. I said, I'm not scared of this one. I'm scared of the one that they
exactly.
And that's when the Bible talks about pandemic and the third seal. So that'll be huge. I think it's the third seal. I'm trying to think of what seal it is.
Not sure the seal, but definitely there's a horseman that brings plague and sickness.
Yeah. Yep. That's one of them. Yep.
Speaking about experimentation on biologics, the University of Pittsburgh. This story is disturbing.
Wow. Yes.
This story should make every person that is a blood-bought believer in Christ enraged at their disregard for life. Yeah.
I'm going to go off for a little bit on this. The University of Pittsburgh admits harvesting kidneys from unborn babies while their hearts are still beating. But this one irked me. The University of Pittsburgh inadvertently provided more evidence this week that aborted babies may be born alive and left to die so that the organs may be used for scientific research. From documents obtained from a Freedom of Information Act request, Judicial Watch and Center for Medical Progress exposed evidence of babies being born alive in abortions and other disturbing practices. The documents show that the federal government gave the University of Pittsburgh at least $2.7 million in federal tax dollars over the last 5 years to become a quote-unquote tissue hub for aborted baby parts for scientific research. The Center for Medical Progress said the university's statements confirmed that the aborted babies are still beating. The hearts are still beating while the kidneys are harvested for scientific research. David Deladian, founder and president of the Center for Medical Progress, said Pittsburgh is now admitting to the news media that aborted babies are still alive at the time their kidneys are cut out for grant money. The Center for Medical Progress and Judicial Watch also noted that University of Pittsburgh boasted about offering, quote, rapid access to very high quality tissue, unquote, including the freshness of aborted baby parts. And the university told the federal government that it has been collecting fetal tissue for over 10 years. Delayden also said if Bill Barr knew about this as Attorney General and did nothing, he should be hauled off to before Congress to explain himself. But the university has been using American tax dollars to pay for its tissue hub, quote unquote, for aborted baby parts for many years. So another experiment that was funded with money received involves scalping 5-month-old aborted babies and then implanting their scalps onto rodents. Along with the study, the researchers published photos of their experiments, horrific images showing tufts of baby's hair growing from the rodents' heads. We're definitely living last days, man. It's just that makes both. I see you shaking your head, Sandy. I'm shaking my head. Come, Lord Jesus, quickly.
It's just, total evil is what it is.
Evil.
You've got to be a completely evil person to do something like that.
Yes.
The doctors and scientists that do this are definitely have demonic spirits that are attached to them in some way. It's just mind-boggling that in a place post Nuremberg, you have thousands of Mangalas being trained in medical universities.
That's right.
Yeah. Man, you see the Hitler's doctors and all those guys that did all the experiments on the twins and all those crazy experiments. Yeah, Mengele's doctors. Yeah. Wow, it's still going. It's being hidden. So,
well, I mean, it's worse than hidden. It's basically it's in plain sight, and there is a spiritual aspect, but it's human experimentation on a scale never seen before.
No.
It's so degraded to the point where people don't even bat an eye that, of course you can harvest a kidney from a baby with a beating heart. Now, there's nothing morally wrong with that, according to these people.
30 years ago, the news media would have been all over that and they would have shut them down. Yes. But now the news media just ignores those kinds of stories completely.
Yeah.
and nobody knows what's going on unless you dig. You really have to dig on your own to find it.
Yeah.
What's more,
if
any laws passed against abortion, why do you think people cry about it? It's not because they care about women's right and reproductive rights. They care about the money that is going to be lost if there's legislation against their precious medical experimentation on human beings.
Well, this all, in a larger sense, this all goes back to the big lie of Satan in the garden that, if you eat that fruit, you will be like God. And so everybody wants to be a God unto themselves today. I want to make my own choices. I'll choose what I am. I'm not a male or a female. I'm some other thing, and the same thing with abortion. I want to be able to choose. But the thing is, the time to make the choice is before you have that sex act that causes you to be pregnant. But nobody wants to deal with that aspect of it. So, it's all of our faults for, saying, that abortion is evil and it needs to stop. But this is yet another reason why the judgment of God is coming down soon.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's what we're seeing right now. That's exactly what we're seeing right now. That's why I'm focusing on a lot of these stories, but you got to go 31,000 foot level and see that it's judgment. Why do we have Biden? And it's judgment. It's judgment. So
absolutely.
It's funny you should bring that up because the next story is about what I feel is also a judgment from God. The fact that we have Biden, who during the vice presidency seemed to, make a lot of money and at the expense of the American people. Talk to me a little bit about Comer's report.
So Comer's report, the memorandum outlines how the Bidens and their business associates received millions from oligarchs in, believe it or not, Russia, Kazakhstan, and Ukraine during his vice presidency. After Hunter Biden received millions of dollars in payments, then Vice President Joe Biden dined with his son's foreign associates in Washington, D.C. Devin Archer, Hunter Biden's former business partner, recently testified that the Vice President Joe Biden was the brand, quote unquote, that they sold to enrich the Biden family and was used to send signals, quote unquote, of access to power and influence. But James Comer said it's clear Joe Biden knew of his son's business dealings. Remember, he denied it. But he knew of his business dealings and allowed himself to be the brand sold to enrich the Biden's family while he was vice president. The committee has now identified $20 million in payments from foreign sources to the Biden family and their business associates. Hunter Biden received millions of dollars in payments from Burisma and two other people. And Vice President Biden had dinner with all of these people in 2014 and 2015 in Washington. So his talk about, I didn't know anything about my son's business and all that. He was right there in it. So
it's all pay for play. I've been doing it for a long time. A lot of these guys have been doing this for a long time. I think this is the tip of the iceberg, to tell you the truth. But, they took a page out of the playbook of people like Marcos in the Philippines, who basically completely ripped off the Philippines at a time when all these people are, all these poor people are living in garbage heaps and stuff over there in the Philippines. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, he's taking all the money that the U.S. gave them, as part of the deal after World War II, taking it for himself.
Yeah.
And, this happened in Micronesia as well. I always told our people, be glad if you have a righteous person who is in charge of your country, your little country, your little island, because all it takes is one person who is out for themselves, and you can completely destroy a little tiny community. And they have. I mean, there's been a couple different people who took all the money that was given to, as part of the trust territory, agreement back in World War II, and took all of it. And so then there's no infrastructure help. Their roads are horrible. The electricity doesn't work right. The water, everything's screwed up because the guy took it and he gave all the money to himself and his relatives, and they all bought these huge boats, so they could zoom around. Wow. I'm telling you, man, this is exactly what third world countries do, and the U.S. is turning into a third world country.
I was just going to say that. You look at Rome, what happened at the first, the turn of the century, and how it demoralized and just came down by 200, 300, 400, and then it went up north. It had to move. And then the Visigoths came in.
Barbarians were at the door. Yeah. That was what was being said. And
409.
Same things happened to us.
I was just thinking of Imelda's shoes. How many shoes did she have?
I think it was 3,000 pairs of shoes.
3,000 pairs of shoes.
He also, I don't know if you got to watch the program called, I think it was called World War II Gold or something like that. And
Yamashita's Gold.
Yamashita's Gold. And he hid gold all over the Philippines. Yep. And apparently Marcos found a fairly large percentage of that gold and took it all for himself.
Yep.
Wow.
There was one guy down there, I think in Mindanao, who found a bunch of the gold, and he went in, got his soldiers in there, and they took it all.
Wow.
And it just all of a sudden it kind of disappeared.
Wow. Went into his safe would be golden. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, you see this over and over again, and there's a lot of these despicable people out there today that run countries that are just ripping them off. And when the U.S., for instance, when the U.S. gives all this money to Ukraine, who's it going to? I mean, I hate to say it, but a lot of those guys are totally corrupt over there.
Yeah.
And so you don't know if the only way that we've actually been really able to get aid to countries that really needed it was for the missions to distribute goods and things like that directly to the people, so to make sure that they actually get it. Otherwise, you send them a whole bunch of food and it goes into a storehouse and it never gets to the people.
Never get it. Yep.
And you would think U.S. would learn from that, but apparently we haven't.
Yeah. I think there's so many people getting money off the kickbacks and off the 20. We're up to 20. I don't know if you have that visual. Do you have that?
I have that visual.
Yeah. Well, let's jump the gun. Let's put it up. Here's another 24 billion that Biden's asking for. Yeah. And that'll make it 224 billion. They're up to about.
Yeah.
Now
show them what that has bought us.
All right. Yeah. You got it. This is what 224 billion has bought us.
Yes.
The red is the Russian occupied, and the blue is the summer offensive.
Counteroffensive. Yeah. Oh man, that's crazy. Wow. It's brainless is what it is.
It's terrible. And, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be helping them, but there's probably better ways to help them. And I don't trust the Bidens to be helping them because they're obviously it's their.
Zelensky is also a schemer too. I mean,
Zelensky is the equivalent of Ferdinand Marcos, but by far,
exactly,
by far.
He's trying to make hay while the sun shines. And you feel for him over there. I mean, it's horrible what the Russians are doing to them, but still, what is the solution? I don't know.
Yeah.
And since Sandy already did my segue for me.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. It
I
just
worked. Thought that was a perfect place for it.
It definitely was. But talk to me a little bit about the Russian jamming that's been going on. That's a big story that is being missed, I believe.
Yeah, and Russia is jamming sophisticated U.S. weapons being used in Ukraine, making them useless. But a lot of truth is about Ukraine is being leaked out, and Americans ought to be furious about the lies they've been told and are still being told. But Russia seems to be scrambling the GPS coordinates, and Russia's electronic warfare capabilities have significantly improved during the present conflict with Ukraine. So they've gotten them better as they've been fighting this war the last year. Russia is now deploying hundreds of small mobile electronic warfare units along the front line, having previously relied on large, cumbersome units that could be easily targeted. It's called the Zitel, Zitel, and it can jam a GPS signal within 30 kilometers of the jammer. So if you have a JDAM bomb, like our JDAM bombs, which we've given Ukraine multiple, a lot of our, weapons, which uses a GPS receiver guiding to its target, loses its geolocation and goes off target. The JDAMs are among the weapons the U.S. has provided to Ukraine, but Russian defenses have proven resilient against Western supplied weapons, with Western tanks largely ineffective. But the huge Russian created minefields have defended successfully positions in South and East Ukraine. So you're looking at, remember I talked about the layers, right? So we're looking at layers and layers and layers that the Russians have defensive lines, and they couldn't really get through. The Ukrainians couldn't really get through. I talked about it, 2 months ago or a month ago, and they couldn't penetrate the first layer. The Ukrainians couldn't, and that was at least 4 weeks ago when the counteroffensive was infant stages. But that's your update on everything, pretty much.
Well, thank you for the update on Ukraine. We'll move on to our next topic, which is the Apostate Church update. Today's Apostate Church update is brought to you by the Presbyterian Church of America. And we'll begin with a clip from a pastor. What's the pastor's name again, Ken?
Her name is Rebecca Todd Peters.
All right, Rebecca Todd Peters, this segment goes to you.
Don't be fooled. As we've seen time and time again, from partial birth abortions to heartbeat bills to the language of unborn babies, how we talk about abortion has a huge impact on how people think about abortion. And when it is primarily Catholics and evangelical Christians who talk about God and faith and abortion, they define the narrative.
Unreal.
So
I mean, she's wearing a Planned Parenthood thing on there.
It's huge.
Her priestly frock has a pink Planned Parenthood logo on it.
Yeah, it's her sermon. I guess that's a sermon on pro-lifers. She rejoices in her 2 abortions that she had too, but she's a professor, author, and a pastor, right? So quote unquote, I guess 2 Timothy 1 Timothy 2, 11 through 15, Paul talks about women and pastors, didn't mean anything to her. But and she's a lover of all things baby killing because she wears that Planned Parenthood thing because she serves as a on the clergy advisory advocacy board of Planned Parenthood. I didn't know they had that, a clergy advocacy board. So, and was just recently elected vice president of Society of Christian Ethics. But a couple of her other sermons were church fasting from whiteness during Lent, so that was awesome. And another one was church releases transgender remix of Be Thou My Vision. I couldn't. And she said stories of Jonah and Zacchaeus are proof we should have subsidized birth control a long time ago. So, but it's a cauldron of wokeness, Yeah, it's almost to the ELCA level. But they challenge each other, which hates Jesus more, But she reminds me of Peter. She shares her disgust that Christians try to use Psalm 139 13 and 14 as the baby being born, right, as a baby being from conception. And verse 13 of Psalm 139, for you created my innermost parts, you wove me in my mother's womb. And verse 14, I will give thanks to you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, and my soul knows it very well. She finishes this sermon shockingly with this. I can also attest that I felt God's presence with me as I made the decision to end 2 pregnancies, and I felt no guilt, no shame, no sin. It's because you're not saved. That's why. It's crazy. Boy. Wow. It just gets worse.
This is the pickle you get into when you disobey the scriptures and you have, female head pastors in these churches. I don't know if you saw this one or not, but it's from a lady who's a pastor of a Lutheran church. Her name is Anna Helgen. She's LGBT, and she has the whole church repeating this creed, and they're all repeating with her. It goes, I believe in the non-binary God whose pronouns are plural. I believe in Jesus Christ, their child, who wore a fabulous tunic and had 2 dads and saw everyone as a sibling child of God. I believe in the rainbow spirit who shatters our image of one white light and refracts it into a rainbow of gorgeous diversity. And I believe in the church of everyday saints as numerous, creative, and resilient as patches of the AIDS quilt. I believe in the calling to each of us that love is love is love is love. So, beloved, let us love.
Wow. That's amazing.
It goes on. I've actually got the video here somewhere, but I just couldn't believe that when I was watching it. This, Luther would be rolling over in his grave to hear something like that. That's horrible.
Yeah. But that's how apostate those guys have been apostate for a long time. It's just they're getting more and more bold with everything they say out loud. Yeah. Maybe it's nuts.
This has gone all through those liberal churches. We got the United Methodists and United Church of Christ, and all those guys have been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, my dad was a Methodist preacher, and I have 6 other preachers in the family, all United Methodists, and they all left. They all got out, and we went to Spirit-filled Methodist for a while, and then they just got out of the Methodist Church completely.
It's so sad what happened to the Methodist Church. It absolutely got ruined by these people. Yeah. And the same thing with the Congregationalists. Yes. They split into the United Church of Christ, which is one of the worst.
Yeah. Yes.
They just go along with everything, all the globalism, all the woke garbage, and it's. But the interesting thing is that at that time, my dad was a Congregationalist pastor, and they had the split at the time when he was a pastor in Indiana, and the split was over whether or not the Bible was basically our highest authority in all matters of faith and and practice in the church, and and they didn't believe, the liberals didn't believe that, and so they split, which they should have, so.
I'd just like to bring up a passage real quickly. Of course, you both have read and know the chapter Ezekiel 8, talking about the abominations of the temple. And listening to this woman preach reminded me of verse 12. He said to me, Son of man, you have seen what the elders of Israel are doing in the darkness, each at the shrine of his own God. They say the Lord does not see us, and the Lord has forsaken the land. Again, he said, you will see them doing things that are even more detestable.
Yes. That's absolutely happened.
Yes. She is a symptom. She is a symptom of a greater apostasy that has taken most church.
Well, I just want to mention this goes along with this. I don't know if you heard that the number one Christian song is by a transvestite by the name of Lori Daigle.
Yes.
And yeah, it's unbelievable.
Yes.
Actually, the number one song on iTunes right now, Christian song,
that's
is one by a transsexual drag queen named Flamey Grant.
Flamey Grant. Yeah.
Bible Belt Baby.
Yeah.
Unreal.
Yeah. Flamey Grant.
That is where the church is at, and that is where worship music, unfortunately, is at.
Yes. But it, like you said, it's a symptom. Those things are a symptom of a larger problem. Unfortunately, we've got these corrupt leaders, but there are people following them.
Yes.
That's, I mean, I've said this before, but I drive past Stephen Furtick's church, one of his many satellite churches, and it's just packed full. You know, 3 or 4 days a week, it's packed all the way full, and I'm sure the rest of them are as well. And here's a guy who came out and said, "I am Almighty God."
Yeah, I am.
What is wrong with people?
The deception. The deception is going to get greater and greater till that ultimate 2 Thessalonians 2 deception.
Yes.
That'll be the ultimate deception.
Talking about another great delusion that we seem to be encountering, not necessarily in the church, but just in general. Let's talk about our UK update. You told me just a mind-blowing statistic, Ken. 40% of the UK citizens don't know trans women are biologically men. Let's unpack that a bit.
Yes. More than a third of all UK citizens are not aware that transgender women are biologically male. I couldn't believe that when I read that. I had to reread that. But this calls into question the fundamental understanding of cultural debate over gender. I mean, the confusion was even more evident when asked about the term trans woman, with 40% of the population either being unsure or believing it meant someone who was simply registered as a female at birth. So when it came to age group, the least understood age group was 25 to 34. Which kind of surprised me. This means, and the age group that best understood the terms were 18 to 24.
Interesting.
So, so younger people actually understood the terms 25, but 55% correctly understood transgender women meant someone who was born male. 45% did not understand that. It's crazy. So I don't understand. I'm going to keep researching it, and I just wanted to bring it up because I read that. Got me.
I just always think about what Peter said about those who deny the flood. He said they are willingly ignorant. And I always think that's the perfect way to describe these people. They don't want to know. They're willingly ignorant.
Yeah. Yes. That's willful ignorance. It's definitely willful ignorance. Yeah. That's what,
Willful ignorance. That brings us to our next actual topic.
Yes.
The persecution of the week. We have in India a very alarming story. A couple and their family were charged with luring Indian nationals to Christianity.
Yes. Yes, and they had their 3-year-old son too. A pastor and his wife and 3-year-old son were jailed on charges of luring innocent people to Christianity. So they've been charged in violation of anti-conversion law in Uttar Pradesh, India's most populous state. Christianity makes up 1% of the 200 million people population. But the pastor's name is Harvinder Singh, so keep him in your prayers. And his wife is Priya. Keep her in your prayers. They're arrested by police and jailed with their 3-year-old son after they were accused of hosting a prayer meeting in their home. Their young son had to be jailed with them because in India, children up to 6 years old are frequently forced to live with their incarcerated parents, especially their mothers. So even though India's constitution has a quote unquote guarantees religious freedom to all persons, Uttar Pradesh's state legislature explained in a copy of the law that anti-conversion statute was necessary to protect gullible persons. So violators of this law can serve up to 5 years in prison. Punishments are enhanced if individuals convert or attempt to convert minors or women. But a couple of, so this is happening in India, obviously, but I was just doing some research, and Christian leaders told reporters that July 30th, 15 Christians, including 3 pastors, were arrested and jailed in separate incidents. Another pastor and 5 others were arrested and jailed for hosting a prayer meeting. This is all in different areas of India. And 2 other incidents, 5 Christians were arrested. So I as well am preaching to myself. We need to pray for the persecuted church. Definitely.
Absolutely. Definitely. I do that all the time, every single day, because there are people, not just in India, but all over the world, and including U.S., Canada, etc., where people are being persecuted for their faith.
Yeah. And look at even in Wisconsin, right? Jay, right?
Yeah, in Wisconsin, and where I used to go to prep school.
Where you used to go to school. Yes. And
Watertown, Wisconsin. I'm so glad I don't live there today.
Yeah. That I told you about the interview that I watched with that kid, and maybe next week I'll talk about it because it was a great interview. That kid is 19 years old and he was on fire. He was preaching. I was watching Jeff Durbin, and Jeff Durbin was interviewing him, and Jeff goes, "You're my hero. You're my hero, kiddo. You're my hero." It was awesome.
This next generation of evangelists, they give me a lot of hope. I see the Lord really working in some of the youth today. And it's just wonderful to see. It really is.
Yep.
Speaking of maybe not so wonderful things, actually, let's talk about News Corp. And actually, this story, it kind of really warms my heart because today it seems that journalists don't have any ethics. They're just propagandists. So it seems it's very easy to replace them. So let's talk about who's replacing journalists.
They're using AI, and it's funny because they produce 3,000 Australian local news stories a week, the News Corp, using AI. But the Data local team uses AI technology to generate stories on weather, fuel prices, and traffic reports. But the News Corp Australia is producing 3,000 articles a week using AI. Most newsrooms in Australia are examining how they can use AI. Reminds me of the German tabloid, The Bild. I don't know if you ever heard Bild. They cut 200 jobs and say most of these were replaced by AI. Bild is the biggest selling newspaper in Europe, believe it or not. But they warned after the 200 people were cut that they'll probably make further editorial cuts because the opportunities of artificial intelligence were insane. So the CEO of Bild said AI tools such as ChatGPT could make independent journalism better than it ever was or replace it. But also real quick, BuzzFeed announced earlier this year that they were planning to use AI to enhance their content. The Daily Mirror, Daily Express are using AI. And in the U.S., Men's Journal has been using AI to generate articles. So, and this is just looking at the basis of maybe, I don't know, the Antichrist, the beast system. Who knows? I don't know. It's got to be something.
Well, one of the dangers is that AI can produce images that look exactly like a person, a real person, and it wouldn't surprise me if they started doing that. Make people say things that they want them to say. When they're not really saying it. Yeah. And that's a danger I see on down the road with this.
I've seen actors. I've seen Tom Cruise and a couple other actors that it was an AI spoof of them doing something, and it was someone else, but it was them. So yeah, I've seen that, and it looked real, and his voice was real. It was crazy.
Sure.
Yeah.
They can analyze the voice patterns and duplicate them, and all these kinds of things, are not too far down the road.
Yeah,
absolutely not. In fact, one of the, things that I've been watching lately are these shorts on TikTok of President Trump, President Barack Obama, and Joe Biden playing Minecraft together and having banter between each other.
Yeah.
Oh,
and yes,
man.
It does sound like them.
Wow.
Sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to get on TikTok. Yeah.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
No, I don't.
It's part of my job.
Okay, got it. That, yeah, it would be part of my job too, now. Oh, man.
All right, let's get to our next story. Let's talk a little bit about the economy in Europe and how it's suddenly there's some big changes going on as far as the best economies in Europe. Let's talk a little bit about Russia and where it's at.
Well, Russia just overtook Germany, becoming the fifth biggest economy in the world in GDP, and it's on a PPP basis. And what's that? That's purchasing power parity. And I know that a lot of people aren't I had to study it and to get financially, aware of it. But it allows the economists to compare economic productivity and standards of living. So in nominal terms, Russia's economy is about the size of Italy, but the PPP terms, it just took over Germany. And if you count its size of its industry and the wealth of its raw material, then it's a lot more powerful player in the global economy than it seems. But what did the late Senator John McCain say? Russia is a gas station masquerading as a country. Right. But arguably, the belittling of Russia over the last decade has led Western leaders to badly miscalculate how vulnerable the Kremlin really is to sanctions. Sanctions on Russia were designed to impoverish Russia and make it impossible to perpetrate its war in Ukraine. But the rest of Europe slides into recession. The Russian economy has proved to be remarkably robust after an initial downturn. But somebody tweeted, sanctions were supposed to crush the Russian economy. Instead, it's now bigger than Germany's. And then you cut out the services and focus only on industry and manufacturing, which is what counts in war, probably be bigger than that. And the cost to Europe, deindustrialization and inflation. So you can see, and I wanted to talk to Sandy about this. I was excited you were on the show, but how Russia expands and becomes, the Gog and Magog and just, your aspect of what that ensues, because I didn't see Russia going away as a power. I didn't see us going in.
No.
We knew from the beginning. I knew they would be strong. And
nope, they're not going away, and they have very similar, what can I say, goals as China does. And in fact, they're kind of, they've been working together to a certain degree. Mm-hmm. And this is why I think there's a very real possibility that if Biden continues in the White House, we're going to have World War III, because, these guys are ramping up, especially China has been ramping up, trying to take over the whole Pacific. You talk to any Pacific Islander and they're trying to get help from the U.S. because China is just in there, trying to take over. And, they don't just want Taiwan. They want everything out there. They want the Micronesian Islands. They want the Philippines. They want Guam, and they're
in Africa. I know that. They're all over Africa.
And the weaker we look, the worse it's going to get. Mm-hmm. And so I think that what the Bible has to say about, Gog and Magog, as well as the armies of the East. I mean, look at China. China can easily, send 200 million soldiers. They've got them. They can do it. And that's what the Bible says, at the time, when I was growing up, that was almost unthinkable. How could they possibly do that? But I think it's very possible. And if they get together and there's this axis of evil, which is also going to include Iran and a number of other, countries, it's going to be a very difficult time. And if the U.S. doesn't prepare for that, which I don't think they really are, they're messing around. They're not really funding the military like they should. They're funding
the military, but it's not to give them weapons. It's to make sure that they're sensitive to train
Yes.
us right.
Yeah, you know,
we've
make it.
talked about that many times. Yep.
Yeah, and how do you think our enemies look at that? They think we're a bunch of pansies over here.
They laugh.
You know, we're a bunch of, you know, there's no real men left in this country, and you know, you start to wonder maybe they're right.
Yeah.
But you know, that's how the world views it when they see these commercials. I couldn't believe the commercials they were running.
Yeah, that one commercial where they had the two mommies and she's in the army, and they actually compared that to the Russian commercial. You know, it's just like da 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 da, and you know, yeah, we're all about them. Yeah,
I don't know if you ever saw a video by Michael Nesmith called "Elephant Parts." Did you ever see that one?
No, I didn't. No.
He was one of the first people who did a music video and with comedy. But in there, he's got this Marine guy, and he's like dressed up in pink and stuff, and he's going, "The few, the proud, the Marines," you know. And, you know, everybody laughed at it, but you know that's exactly what they're doing now.
That's where we are now.
That is exactly where we're at. How long ago was that? Sandy?
Oh, that was a long time ago. That's the 70s, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's a very funny video, actually.
Wow.
But, you know.
Prophetic.
It just reminded me of that. I mean, what kind of a, you know, message does that send to people who, you know, it's not, you know, you're not coming from strength. You're coming from weakness, you know.
Yeah.
And it's just really sad. And
it is.
But
it's where America's going, though. It's a judgment on this country. It is. We'll keep talking about that.
And I've been thinking about writing an article comparing the end times with Sodom and Gomorrah, because when you look at it, it's basically a picture of what's going to happen in the end.
Well, what did Billy Graham say? And I'm not a Billy Graham fan. I know there's other things, but anyway, he said one time, if God doesn't judge America, he owes Sodom and Gomorrah an apology.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Yeah, I really thought that was
interesting. You know, the Pride people, of course, you know, they're flying this corrupted rainbow flag, which really irritates me, because that's the very promise that God would not destroy the earth over these issues. But you know what? He is going to destroy it, and it's going to be by fire. And we were talking about fire earlier.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to happen. But it was all over, you know, them trying to molest these angels. I could see people trying to do that now. They got such a low idea of God and everything else. You know, I could see guys going door to door trying to rape angels, you know, and whatever. It's just become ridiculous.
I mean, the imagery is really, really kind of interesting when you think about it.
Yes.
Here you have the divine before you, and now you've lost your sight, so you can no longer see the divine. So your first impulse is to continue to try to be a deviant rather than repenting.
Right. Yeah. And also to try to get people to go, you know, I often said this when I was, you know, messed up with drugs for a few years, that the main thing that people do is they try to flush you down the same toilet they've been flushed down. They try to take you down as far as they can go to make you like them. And that's what we see today. You know, they're trying to make everybody like them. They're getting these little kids who should not be making these kind of decisions to alter their bodies especially at the age they're at. And now they're finding, you know, there's a lot more stories coming out where they're finding how detrimental that actually is. You know,
the suicides.
The
suicides are at 40% or something like that. They're
it's horrible.
The ones who
you know, it's you know, people are finally coming out and testifying to that. I've got some stories on my site over that, but you know, it's just it's really, really sad what's going on. You know, this is absolute Well, some of the things that we're talking about is just treating children like they're, some kind of thing, and just it's getting so ugly now. And I really think people who take advantage of children like that, they need to have the death penalty.
Yeah.
I'm really tired of that kind of stuff. They're ruining these little kids' lives.
Well, what did Jesus say, right? Anyone who causes one of these to stumble,
Exactly.
Better for a millstone.
Yeah, better than the millstone.
These people are going to have millstones around their necks.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is part of the apostasy, and it's also part of the world going back to what it was before the flood, and even worse. I think it's even worse than it was before the flood now.
Yeah, I think it's going to be worse. I think so.
Speaking about the exploitation of children, other than as far as it's going, we have our last topic because we are over time. Thank you, Sandy.
Yes.
We're so happy to have you, and it's been awesome to have you.
Yes.
But our last topic is, why is America's woke left silent about Sound of Freedom, which is shedding light on the very thing we've been talking about, the exploitation of children, not necessarily for a woke agenda or a transsexual agenda, but for slavery, which is still active today.
Yeah, and it begs the question: does silence and slamming the movie equal complicity in this unspeakable crime? It's crazy. For reasons known only to them, the left-leaning media and other institutions appear to be strangely anxious to draw the curtain on this production. All right, is what I wrote. After all, as this movie reveals, there are more people enslaved now by sex trafficking than were, when slavery was legal. But also an increasing number of many people, them employed by the movie industry, they're speaking out about pedophilia and what's going on in Hollywood ranks, and the fact that the effort are now been seen taken, it's crazy. The aura of the suspicion is, it's not to see. I was looking at Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon, and they've avoided streaming service like the plague. So the calls to legitimize pedophilia and pardon those who are guilty, it reminds me of Rome and Greece in the last days. That's exactly what we're talking about. And I guess the movie was taking away focus on the LGBTQ parades, a drag queen story hour, and discussion of elementary school kids about transgender and alternative sexual lifestyles. But it's hard to imagine things getting more upside down in the land of the free and the home of the brave. It looks like madness has only just begun. And that's what Sandy was just saying, so.
Where there is smoke, there is fire. Now, I'm just going to go through a real quick list, and you tell me if there's a fire. Okay. Netflix, movie called Cuties. It's about young girls dancing around and winning a contest, 7, 8 years old. Okay. We have Bryan Singer, famous director, worked for Fox, made a lot of money making Marvel movies. Allegations of him molesting a young boy. We have Ezra Miller, who is the Flash currently in DC's universe. All sorts of interesting allegations around him grooming a young, I believe, boy in Hawaii, of all places. We have the directors at Disney that have the same thing. You look at some of James Gunn's tweets in the past, very famous director, producer, did a lot of Marvel movies again. He's had some very interesting tweets during the Comet Ping Pong and Pizzagate. Yeah. So I've given just 3 small examples. I could keep going. I could talk about Corey Feldman. I could talk about the allegations there. I could talk about just on and on and on, all throughout the industry. And yet the denial that there's anything wrong when it comes to the executives at these studios and the actors, it's mind-boggling.
And then, what we see going on in the culture, what we see going on in Hollywood, et cetera, is also translating into the churches.
Yeah.
So many mega church pastors of late have been found to be molesting children. We just had a guy here in North Carolina. He's been molesting children for years, and they finally shut him down and disallowed the church from even having youth ministries.
Wow.
So it's happening more and more often. It's translating into the church as well.
Well, I know there's a remnant, and it's going to be not a whole lot of those big churches are going to be involved.
No, they won't, and that's not the way to do church anyway. What they're doing is completely wrong. It has nothing to do with biblical church. That certainly has nothing to do with the first century church, which is what we ought to be emulating. And I'm glad to say what Moriel is really promoting around. We've got, David Lister and it's going to be Marco going down to Australia, and they're going to be promoting house churches.
Yep.
And I think that's a good answer.
Jacob's done that many times too. Jacob's done that,
yes,
many times too. Yeah. Yes.
So we need to be encouraging people, and also we're giving them resources by teaching, verse by verse Bible studies, as well as other topical material, like the stuff that we're doing here, and to try to help people to cope with what's going on.
Amen. Amen.
Well, Sandy, I think that is about as good a conclusion we can of this broadcast. Once again, we'd like to thank everyone who are watching. Thank you for your continued patronage of this podcast. Please leave a comment and maybe a compliment. We'll pass them on to Sandy, and hopefully if we get enough comments, Sandy will return.
Yep. Oh, I'm glad to come back when I can. So
Amen.
This was fun. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. God bless. Hello, and thank you for watching Moriel TV. There are so many things that are happening at Moriel Ministries worldwide, from the Philippines to Japan to India to Africa and back to Europe and the United States. So many of our brothers and sisters are spreading the good news of Jesus Christ to this lost world. We are so thankful for your prayers. God has been faithful and has blessed us in so many ways. If you'd like to partner with our efforts abroad and at home, please take a moment to click the link in the description and help us as the Lord leads you. Thank you very much, and God bless.